Welcome, everybody, to another episode of GTM Innovators by 360 Insights. I'm your host, Kyle James, and today we're diving into the value of strategic analyst relations as part of a go-to-market strategy. A little bit meta, me being a research analyst, but wanted to have this conversation because it's something that when we were talking with Chris recently about, he has a big passion for too. So, Chris, welcome to the show today.
I'm super excited to be here. It's an honor, and can't wait to talk not only analyst relations, but analysts and firms and analysis. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. So, Chris joining us, a true veteran of analyst relations with over 13 years of experience helping companies navigate relationships with firms like Gartner, Forrester, IDC, and you are the Global Analyst Relations Director at Sprout Social, and the North American co-lead of the Institute of Influencers Analyst Relations. Man, I'm stumbling over words today. But Chris, instead of me kind of reading out right. Instead of me really reading out all your accomplishments, I usually love to start these conversations with, why don't you, give us a little bit of your origin story about how you kind of gotten here and kind of some of the paths you've gone to building relationships with analysts and kind of what you do now at Sprout Social.
Absolutely. I love talking about this. So because I have a different type of journey than maybe other folks do, or maybe the similar, because analyst relations is a kind of a strange job. It's kind of weird, right? Because people kind of fall into it. It's not something that you find in business school or you find, anywhere. It's sort of an interesting type of place. Not a lot of people, do it, and it's very specific. So, I always like to say I started out in the United States Air Force, which I loved. Went to grad school, got a couple grad degrees. I got a Master of Science in something called Future Studies. So that's like high-level research. I paired that with an MBA, but I had no sort of corporate experience. But I knew that I really enjoyed being a part of strategy, trying to understand where things are going, trends, sort of being at the tip of the spear when it comes to how business or a product or a service is being directed. And I found this very specific job, analyst relations, which was, speaking to industry analysts, gaining insights on where things are going, working with the leaders of the company to help direct strategy and understand the size of the market and how to compete. And I was like, this is it. This is the job that I want to do. And I reached directly out to the recruiter. Luckily I was able to get the job, and, it's been sort of a love and a learning at the same time, really my entire career. So I feel like every single time I moved to a different firm, whether it was a, large organization like an IBM, whether it was a, sort of a smaller space like I'm doing right now at Sprout Social, reaching out to the analyst community, doing things like advisory sessions, completing competitive reports and learning how to compete effectively in it, learning how to engage with analysts, right? Not just face-to-face, but actually through inquiry calls and engagements, stewarding the completion of thought leadership, not just those competitive reports that we're talking about, but surveys or co-partnered papers, right? Something that's the reason, of course, why we're speaking, because we did something ourselves with 360, which is really fantastic. So, when it comes to analyst relations, there's a chance I've done it all or been a part of it, or at least know folks because I'm involved in a lot of these different analyst relation networks who have done it. So, it's a labor of love. I have to say it's exactly where I want to be because it hits all of the things that I really love, right? I love learning. I love knowing things. I love assisting and helping, and I love people. And ultimately, that's really what analyst relations is all about. It's about relationship development, both external relationship development with industry analysts like the folks at 360, as well as, your internal relationships as you help to drive the strategy of the products and services and sort of gain insights on how you can kind of take your innovation conversations and embed it into the analyst's eyes and ears so they can go ahead and make some sense of how you're making it to the market.
Awesome. Well, and it probably makes a little bit of sense because some people out there are probably more familiar with analyst relationships than others. Some companies have them, some companies don't. But I'm really curious, how do you think about it? Because, and I'll kind of lead it with me. It's third-party validation. It's third-party content that can help you tell stories that aren't, maybe not a little less independent, less biased maybe, but, kinda how do you define it with what it is and kinda how people should think about it and why it's important for companies to work with third-party independent analysts and researchers to kinda come up with content to tell stories?
Mm. So, one thing I'll say is that when you are bringing a product or a service to market, there's a lot that's put into this, right? There is the experience of the person driving that. There is the company strategy behind, should we purchase our way through this? Should we hire more people to innovate faster? Do we grow in international standards or not? How do we compete? And what's the reality in the competition? Like, there's a lot going on in order to do very well. And so you need some insights. You need somebody outside of the organization. Because what I find is that if you only have the organization, you only have the people who are building the product or building the service, the thing is you get lost in the love that you have for your way of going to market, your way of delivering a product or service or building it, and you might not be paying attention because you're trying to get the customers, move as quickly as you can, get your stock price up with all the various things. And so there's so much that it takes to truly succeed in the IT marketplace that you might essentially have blinders on to think like that, oh, you know what, there might be things we're behind on. There might be things that we need to work on. There might be a space where our particular product or service may fit, and maybe we're just not presenting it the proper way. We're not marketing in the right way. Maybe we're not doing our go-to-market strategy properly. So what industry analysts do is give you a third-party view. Give you somebody who has some sort of neutral way of viewing at the marketplace, somebody who's at the intersection of not only yourselves, but your direct competitors, your customers, what's happening in the market trends. So industry analysts, they have an interesting sort of intersection of all things your space, and they are experts, right? Because they're speaking to all these folks, they're tracking it, they're building reports, they're building insights. So frankly, I find it's invaluable to speak to these folks because in some ways they're the scientists, the ones that are breaking down these specific spaces. And by breaking it down, you're able to not only partner with them, right, to potentially build content, but you're actually there to listen, to gain some insights. And to me, what I really enjoy is there's just a sandbox type of relationship. You get to go inside the sandbox. You get to speak openly about where your product and service is at and how it's going and how it's competing. I think there's chances for differing of opinion too. I don't think you just have to say, yes, you're correct. We're going to do exactly what you say. I think it's always good to have a good back and forth with the industry analyst who's covering you. Frankly, I like to speak to many different industry analysts, right? I like to kind of triangulate a little bit of a view. Maybe I'll hear from one particular firm and I'll ask one question. I'll ask the same question to the other firm. I'll ask the same question to another firm, right? So you can kind of triangulate a view of what's going on. So because you're constantly connecting, you're constantly ingesting, there's research, there's blogs, there's webinars, there's podcasts to listen to, you're swimming in all this information. So our job is actually to synthesize that, to make sense of it, to say, hey, pay attention to them, prepare your leaders for the engagement that they're going to have, prepare your team, whether it's product marketing or product when it comes to actually helping out by filling out RFIs, timely information. So, our job really is assisting sort of information flow from the industry analysts to our internal teams and from our internal teams to those industry analysts. And so by doing that, I think we gain a deeper understanding of the space. And frankly, I think we compete more. I think we compete better. And I think we have sort of a better view of how we can innovate ourselves to success.
Yeah, and I think everything you said kind of shows like how much you enjoy relationships, right? Because what I heard you say is this is a
Yes.
lot of lessons, listening and learning from outside parties. And the way you do that is to build relationships with people. But it's ways that you might be
Yes.
blind to or can't see internally because a lot of times companies have their blinders on and are so focused on that next objective, that milestone, that growth target that they're trying to set that they can miss things that are super obvious to anybody that kind of can see a little bit externally and can see what else is going on in the industry or in the space or what others are doing and how, as that 3D chess is playing out, other people are making moves too, and not just you, and can kind of learn what are some of those other moves and how they're impacting and how they're affecting what we're doing and so on, right?
That's totally correct. And, I think sometimes too, it's not even just the fact that maybe you miss something, but maybe you just want to verify to ensure that your path is the right one. That happens a lot too, right? Like I get a lot of folks that are frankly, my product leaders, the product marketers I work with, they're some of the best, smartest people in the spaces. What's really kind of interesting too, when you work with industry analysts, many of them were product marketers, were product leaders, did take a startup and go it all the way to acquisition, or they just have 20, 30 years of experience in that space. They've written books, they have PhDs, they're teaching classes. So the amount of rich information that they have is extremely helpful. And what I find is that great product folks sometimes are debating, but sometimes they're just being reassured that the path that they're building is correct. And I think that's what makes the relationship so important. My job really is to build relationships with the analyst as best as I can and kind of set up the relationship, the facilitation with my team, right? Because again, like we're saying, they're busy trying to get customers. They're busy reaching out to customers for references. They're trying to innovate as quickly as they can and build something better. Their CEO is reaching out to them, and they got to do an update. So they're so busy. So my job is to minimize the pain, maximize the value, direct the information, however. So what you see from me, and this is one thing I like to do in analyst relations, is not just building the relationships, of course, connecting through inquiries, doing face-to-face connects, maybe having an analyst day where you can share your vision and your innovation cycle on a huge scale, right, to 30 or 40 analysts all at the same time. All that's completely possible. But what I really try to do too is beyond that, how can I synthesize the deluge of information that I'm getting? So I'll do things like weekly breakdowns of what's happening in the marketplace. Sometimes I'll synthesize a piece of research and put it into a slide deck or something. I do my own inquiries one-on-one to kind of gain insights and speak on behalf of the product and or the strategic team to kind of gain direct insights and then send that directly back to my leadership. And so whether I'm bringing product or bringing product marketing along the way, whether I'm doing it myself, whether the CEO is in tow, whether we've got the CMO or the strategy team that's learning stuff, doesn't necessarily matter. And what I find is that analyst relations is it's even beyond product. Sometimes it's my marketing team is trying to get insights. Sometimes my sales team is learning how to go to market better and whatnot. So we're everywhere. There's if you're a really great analyst relations person, you try to drive value wherever you are, and if it's in product one week, and with product marketing the next, and with sales and or campaign or content management the one after that, we want to provide value however we can. And that's what makes it really exciting.
Nice. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this because you've worked at a lot of companies in this role in different sectors and in different company sizes. What is the difference, especially,
Yes.
is it different or really it kind of comes down to fundamental core things that work across all industries and all sizes in kind of this world? Or there's certain certain strategies for go to market that work well or not, kind of speak on that because you're in that position where you kind of seen it all, I imagine, right?
Well, maybe I haven't seen it all, but I've definitely seen a
You've seen
lot,
a lot.
right?
You've seen a lot.
And what I'll say is that in some ways, analyst relations is the same and also completely different depending on, what your angle is and in some ways, what are you trying to do?
Sure.
So let's say you work at a big, huge firm. Let's say you work for a AWS or a IBM. I worked for Cognizant and Wipro before. These are huge organizations. They have so many different spaces that they're in. There's so much innovation that's being driven. And sometimes it's at different levels. You might have sort of a corporate sort of analyst relations where it's kind of a broader. You're helping assist with when it comes to large scale or events like the World Economic Forum, or you're going to RSA. When it comes to security. So it's sort of a top level AR, right? That you're just trying to assist the leaders and be able to get them to connect with the thought leaders at that level. When you get specifically into the product segments or services segments, well, this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is actually driving the specific innovations in those specific areas. And there may be like many different competitive reports and different market guides that you may have to assist with. And so the larger box players, the ones that have 30 or 40 different analyst relations folks, those are very sub-segmented by a specific purpose. And so that particular AR person might be doing lots of reports and maybe not a lot of proactive engagement, or vice versa. So it's just because the scale of the organization, it requires so much. And so you need that much more. And so you're going to completely segment what that AR person does because, they can't do everything and the scale of the organization will not allow it. When you're looking at a smaller organization, let's say the mid-tier, here you have essentially not the same scale, but you might actually have different types of segments that you're in as well. So you'll have probably lots of engagements around competitive reports or guides. You might have different product marketing or product teams that you're working with. So you're working with sort of a different team, either week to week or quarter to quarter, depending on what the needs are. And so, you're still sort of report sort of directed, and maybe though you're doing some more proactive engagement, trying to learn how to do better in those particular reports. So, very busy. All these, jobs, of course, are extremely busy. When you go to the one person band, right? So one specific space, that's currently what I'm doing right now. Well, now you might not have as many of the reports or the broad communications or connections that you're doing at the larger scale firms. And so because of that, you're freer to actually go deeper into the particular spaces. And so I'm lucky enough to be able to do lots of proactive engagement, exploring all the different subsegments of Sprout Social. So whether it's influencer marketing, whether it is our work in social care, whether it's our work around social analytics and social listening, I'm able to explore these with a lot of depth, because I'm not weighed down by all the the events and or all these different competitive reports that are keeping me extremely busy. So I'm able to do more strategic analyst relations, which is going and speaking to as many analysts as possible to help direct the innovation of the company. So all of these could change, so for instance, I'm doing 2 competitive reports right now. So I'm doing a little bit less strategic analyst relations. Sometimes actually and really I think there's kind of 3 distinct ways to do AR. There's sort of AR for sales. So maybe you're assisting, maybe you're helping with an advisor relations team or trying to get sales across the finish line. You're trying to help the competitive intelligence person to compete properly. So there's a sort of information and sales help. There's the analyst relations for, report value, like we were talking about, like creating the reports, making sure they get done, making sure the thought leadership gets done and marketed properly. And then there's the strategic kind of engaging in the topics, the product segments, trying to understand where everything's going on. All of these interplay. They're all interconnected, and month to month, year to year, you might have a different sort of lens that analyst relations can go through. But I hope what you're seeing is that an analyst relations person has to have a lot of hats, right? They might be a technical sort of person who really understands the space. They might be somebody who really understands how to kind of get big things done within a marketing organization or trying to get a competitive report done. Or they might just be a great relationship person, an event manager, right? Who's really great at facilitating big, huge events. And all the organizational stuff that is required in order to run, gigantic teams. So, analyst relations and the people that do it are sort of jack of all trades, right? And typically they have a lot of experience either in the space or a lot of experience in IT in general. So they can have sort of a good mix of both soft and hard skills to sort of get the job done.
Well, let me ask you this, kind of what specific metrics, and I'm sure the answer is probably it depends, but what metrics should companies kind of track to kind of measure the ROI of their analyst, or there's certain things that you track, or it really depends on what you're trying to do and accomplish at the time, whether that's a report and you're trying to get a certain amount of reach, or an event that you're trying to bring analysts to. But like how should companies think about measuring the ROI on their analyst relations team or person?
Absolutely. So, kind of what I was talking about before, right? Like the different ways that analyst relations can help. Is it going to help drive revenue? Is it going to help with the sales cycle? Is it going to help with content creation? Is it going to help with strategic insights? Is it going to do all three? Right? Or is the ratio a little bit different, just depending? So if you're doing the, revenues, like how many eyeballs, how much are we getting AR attached to deals? Were we able to actually note that we were able to get 10, 20, 100, $200 million attached to the analyst relations engagement, right? So that's like in some ways the holy grail, being able to use your AR program and the investment that you do to be able to get revenue in. So that's a crucial metric to potentially look out for, and it's something that AR people do, sort of peg to. The other stuff to think about is also the content that you create. So if we are creating content, well, that's going to be a part of the go-to-market sort of engine. So, when you're downloading the reports, when you're getting the eyeballs on the webinar that you're stewarding, how many, seats or analysts attended your event, how many post-event write-ups did you have, and were those positive? What are the positive mentions? How many mentions are happening all across the research, right? So, the more briefings, the more engagements you do, the more your name is being connected, right? There's a part of AR that's very much kind of PR, right? The same thing, right? We are actually engaging so we can get mentions, so we can get our name up in lights. And of course, the more mentions we have, the more possibility will be in these competitive reports. And perhaps if we have really great product, the better we do. So I look at things like, are we bringing in revenue? Are we assisting in the go-to-market strategy? Are we is our name coming up in these reports? How well are we doing these competitive reports? And then the last thing is the analyst relations for strategic understanding. So this sort of stuff is more along the lines of, are we actually getting insights? Are we delivering these insights directly to the folks that actually need it in the product marketing, the strategic levers of the company? Sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's a CMO who's actually looking for something that's very timely. And this will happen from time to time where I'll have a strategic leader reach out to me. They've got a presentation they're working on, their board's coming up, we're working on some data that they need to collect, and they need something yesterday to fuel exactly the exact presentation, the data, the metric that they're looking to do. So in some ways, like a proper AR manager is going to try to hit all of these, and they're not only going to try to hit all of these type of metrics, both through sales as well as content management as well as the insights, but they're going to track things like, okay, well, who am I engaging with? Who are the firms that I'm engaging with? I like to track who's coming along with me, right? Because it can't just be me doing these engagements. Is it my leader? Is it my product marketer? Are different parts of product coming? And if you have even also a product that actually has specific product segments, you need to track, okay, well, you know what? I'm spending too much time in this particular segment. We really need to do some outreach next quarter in this one. So frankly, you want to hit all of these. And the reason why is that, it's one thing that we haven't discussed yet, but AR, it costs money. It costs money to actually have this access. This is not, by the way, which is really great about it, is that this is not a lot of the content that we have access to, the analyst time, the engagement that we have. That's not chat GPT-able, right? We can't Gemini and or Copilot our way to these insights. This is behind paywalls. And so, the stuff that we're learning is very unique. And so it costs money. There's a cost to analyst relations. And so what I like to do is to drive as much value as possible. So whether that is getting an insight that my CEO needed immediately, whether that's getting as much eyeballs or as many downloads as I can on a competitive report, or helping actually maybe drive some revenue in that pays for the analyst relations budget, I want to track all of it because you never know what leader and or what metric a different leader needs to follow. So I think you kind of have to do it all. and you have to sort of build a mechanism or many mechanisms to track it and be able to share exactly where the value is that you're driving each and every day, each and every week.
Yeah, it's like building a whole company inside of a company in a lot of ways, it sounds like, because you have all these different connections and all these different stakeholders in the company, and you're delivering different things to different ones depending on what they need when, right?
Correct. Correct. And it's just relations.
Yeah.
This job is a constant relations development. And that's why there's a sort of soft skills that comes with it. And by the way, there's many times where when I am leading a presentation,
Mm.
there's some times when I'm facilitating and letting other person leading. Sometimes I'm not saying anything, and I'm just making sure that we're on time and there's coffee and we've got donuts coming and the space looks nice, right? So your job could depend, just depending on what day you're doing. You could lead a technical discussion, you could just be there to assist, or you could just be there just to make somebody look good. Make sure that they're prepared. Here's the analyst profile. Here's what they've been writing about this. Here's some things that they potentially are going to ask you. So my job is to make people feel comfortable, to make people feel heard, to make sure that they're gaining insights, and sometimes changing tacks and figuring out what's the best way to get the most value out of the relationships and relationship development that we can do with these industry analysts. So it's a lot of fun, but we really need to pay attention and put the onus on the relationship development at the heart of AR.
Let's flip it around. Like, you talked about a lot of the success, but like, what are some common mistakes that people do or you've seen, right, when they're trying to leverage your analyst relationships? Or what are some common mistakes you've seen people make? Or maybe a story of something you've made in the past that if you feel comfortable sharing it. Like, lots of good stuff, but they're also like, what are some of the negatives or bad things that have happened out there that you would encourage people to avoid?
So, there's plenty of good, but this good is hard. It's hard to do. We're talking about folks, whether they're your strategic leaders, your CEO, whether it's your product leaders. These are people that have been doing this job for 10, 15, 20 years. Their opinions matter, right? What they say is vital. And how they feel about themselves is vital. And so my job is actually to get these thought leaders inside my company to speak to these other thought leaders and kind of co-work and cohabitate, right? And unless I make both sides feel good and both sides feel prepared, sometimes it's a hard meeting, right? Because there might be some disagreement. There might be some issues in between. And this happens a lot when analyst firms actually are trying to do a competitive analysis, because every firm, I don't care where you work at, believes their platform, their product, their service is the best.
Yeah.
And if and frankly, that's good because they need to have some confidence in what they're delivering to the market. But where you see problems is actually when on the firm side, they don't see the flaws that they potentially have. And they're not willing to actually look at the truth, look at themselves in the mirror, open up the hood and kind of see where the issues are in it. And that's really where an analyst relations program could falter, when there's not really an authentic view of what is happening inside of the firm, right? And what, and how well you're competing, how well you're doing, right? Everybody loves it when you're a leader. Everybody loves it when you are the number one innovator, you're making the most money, but most companies aren't. Most companies are somewhere in the middle, or they're competing very well, in product, or they're competing very well in revenue, but like vice versa, the other players are doing better, or they're innovating quicker, or they're making a little bit more money. So sometimes it's a little bit of a wash, and you kind of have to figure out like, well, okay, well then where's the truth in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from the analyst perspective though, and this is where the relationship development comes in, is that if you don't actually have a relationship with them, then there is no real trust that you're getting from
Very
them.
true.
And so it's hard actually to connect that trust with these leaders that are, by the way, getting skewered, quote unquote, or at least having their product be sort of examined in this way. Nobody wants to have their work be examined in a critical way. No one really likes these critical views. And so from the analyst perspective, you really actually want to build trust with them, make them feel good, make them feel heard, but also like sometimes you got to pick the right ones too, or at least be able to work with them in a way that sort of connects with their vibe or their style.
Yeah.
Analysts are just, like these, we're talking about people,
They're all
right? We're
people.
talking about
Right.
the leaders in both these spaces, both with a lot of egos. And so our job is to sort of assuage both, to make it comfortable in both, and actually make sure that you build relationships with both folks. So then when you have these facilitated talks, when you have these kind of critical discussions about where the product's at, we do it as colleagues, we do it as peers versus enemies versus, oh, geez, like I'm going to battle against this person. And frankly, that's not the way. The one thing to note too about the complexity here with this, and as you break down these spaces, is that, if you can't compete in one of these reports, then you just can't compete because this is what it's like. These other companies are going to come after you. They're going to come
Yeah.
after you via the product, via how you sell, via in the marketing. However, competing in these spaces is really difficult. So frankly, when an analyst comes and takes a look at it, you really get to show like how the heart is placed, and actually true maybe how you can actually go to market best by actually making sure that you are open-hearted and open-minded and willing to look critically at some of the tougher places. But to me, that's the hardest part of analyst relations, is that it's extremely political. When you're at the tip of the spear, that's the first place that hits somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
And you're
and so
coaching a
that's
lot of people to check their ego. I mean,
yeah.
and
Well, and it's not even
be
just the
humble,
ego
right?
thing. Yeah, and it's sometimes there is. And I've seen this happen, right? Like a misanalysis of how the market is being put together. That's completely true too. There's some truth in it. There's an analyst has to put the market in a box, and it says, this is the things that I think are important in driving this market. That could be fundamentally different from what the firm is doing.
Fair.
Right. And
They
I've
just have a
seen
difference
actually
of
too,
opinion.
where you're put into that box and maybe you don't belong in that box. Maybe you belong in another one. And so there's a forcing mechanism there. Right. But how do you kind of make sure that this doesn't happen? By building relationships across these different stakeholders, right? Your internals, and keeping them aware, hey, this is what the analyst is saying. Here's how they're painting this box. Here's the things I think we might do well. Here's the things maybe might be critical. And it's something to think about, right, before we have this conversation. From the analyst, it's more along the lines of, we appreciate this insight. We really think this is important here. Maybe even being a speaker for the firm a little
Yeah.
bit before they
Yeah.
meet. Like, you know what? We're unsure we fit in this space, or, I think this might be a pain point, but let's kind of figure it out, right? Ultimately, our job is about facilitating information between folks, about making sure that people have an optimal sort of understanding of where these spaces are, and sometimes reducing the friction, not only in the room, but even in the process, right? Ensuring
Mhm.
that we could steward the information properly from one side to the other so everybody completely understands it. I think there's a lot of times where analyst relations is viewed as just like you just pay somebody more money and that they will cover you better, right? There's this whole
Light,
idea of
right.
pay to play, right? Like you pay to play. What I say is you pay to understand. I pay to have access to the information to help my firm be able to deliver, their product better, to have an understanding of what's happening in the go-to-market strategy, which may better our position and in some ways, getting to our customers better or faster and whatnot. So
Yeah.
my job is really to truly help assist, in this information sort of sourcing, both from my firm and back. And that takes trust. It takes consistency, I think. And it just takes, being willing to open your heart and mind so you can sort of gain some insights and find your way to the top, and in not only in innovation, but, also in revenue as well.
Let me change it up a little bit on you and kind of ask I don't know if this is a really tough political question for people to think about, but like, what do you think of analyst relationships best lives in an org, right? Like sometimes it's in communication,
Hmm,
sometimes it's in marketing. I imagine sometimes it's even in product, depending on where they kind of put the product marketing people.
sure.
But what do you think is the best way to kind of like, where should it sit? Do you have a strong opinion? But secondly, like, how does it feed the insights across every department? Because you end up, right? Sales enablement, product marketing, customer
Hmm.
success, it become an asset to all these different, pieces of the org. But where does it sit and why
So
maybe?
Yeah, it sits in all these different places that you mentioned, right? It could sit with communications, it could sit with public relations. I've seen it sit in strategy. I've seen it sit in product. I've seen it sit with product marketing. And you're kind of like noting, depending on where it's sitting, might be like the analyst relations program that they're sort of looking to do. So if you're
Yeah.
sitting in communications, you might want the mentions to go up. There's a lot of reports. You're creating marketing engine behind it. You're trying to get get Sprout Social in the hearts and minds of everybody out on LinkedIn and everywhere else as much as possible. Let's say if you're connected with strategy, well, maybe you really want to understand the M&A landscape. You're really trying to understand the size of the market. You're really trying to figure out the competitive landscape and how you can sort of do better, because that's going directly to the CEO and the major levers to direct the product or service of where it's going.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think the best place is within product and or product marketing. And in some ways, product marketing might be the optimal place,
Okay.
because analyst relations still is marketing and communications. We're
Sure.
still creating information. It still is in the market creation sector. That, to me, I think that's where a lot of the value can be derived, because you do very well in a competitive report, or you have these market guides, and you can use them, as I was saying before, as a go-to-market engine, as a way to sort of get customers' eyeballs onto your product or service, and you can actually attribute the money that you invest in these reports back to potential deals, right? So there's the whole, getting the revenue, as I was noting. So where product marketing is really interesting is that the product marketers are connected to product.
Yeah.
And product are super busy. Like they're building the product. So it's kind of a good to actually be more aligned with product marketing, because we actually have the same sort of things. Analyst relations is trying to turn the innovations, the language of the innovations in product, the roadmap, the vision of where it's going, and turn it into something tangible that I can then communicate via deck or an RFI or a narrative and send it to the analyst so they can gain an insight, and then they can properly compare us or put us in market or anything else. Who
You've
else
just
does
got
that?
a niche persona, niche audience that
Right,
you're going out to
right,
instead of whatever the
right.
customer might be. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Right.
sense.
But who else does that, frankly? Product marketing does the same
Right.
exact thing. They
Right.
literally are doing the same thing. A lot of times it's segmented by the different parts of the product or platform. They have the same decks. They have the same information. They have the same things that they're trying to do. So frankly, I think the best place for it, and where I've seen really strong programs take off really well, is when they're really aligned to product marketing and or product, because that's when you take the insights and it's going directly into the product and or service, and helping it change, gain insights, and get a kind of a view of what's happening. But as we were talking before, I think the best of the best programs not just work through the lens of product and or product marketing, but are impacting all these other areas, sort of in a balanced way. And so, depending on the type of projects that are happening, and like any good corporate executive, you're doing multiple projects all the time. You might be aligned to different parts of the organization for different needs.
That's what it sounds like. That's what I'm hearing for. If you're AR, analyst relations in a certain department, it's kind of a tell about what you're trying to measure and what's important to you, right? But if
Right.
you're trying to do what is best by the company and everybody, it kind of sits in that product marketing org, because it's doing the same thing. It's just got a different target audience.
Correct.
Makes a
Correct.
ton of
Right.
sense.
And sometimes it's the same target audience,
Yeah,
right?
that can be.
And it's a synthesis tool thing too, right? I know sometimes, many times actually, product marketers, they're very segmented themselves.
Mhm.
So if you're at even the size of Sprout Social, medium-sized firm, we have many different product segments. And so we have product marketers that are attached to influencer marketing or social care. And that's all they do each and every day, is drive that innovation and put it into the marketplace, put it on the website. They've got a webinar coming up. They've got a new thing that's coming up on the roadmap. They have a new type of innovation that's going to be coming in coming months, and so there has to be a narrative around it. There has to be a deck. There has to be a positioning statement, and so they may
Yeah.
work with me to get the briefing done. And or sometimes my job is to actually go above it all and kind of create this overarching Sprout narrative. So I have to work with all of them. to compete. You have the corporate kind of view of how we're going to market broadly, and then you have the segmented view where it's like, this is how we're going to win in influencer, this is how we're going to win in these specific other platform segments. So that's the magic, right? Because analyst relations is sort of hitting at the heart of what a company needs to perform and do well in both the technology capabilities as well as the go-to-market strategies.
I love
And so
it.
because of it, like, we are having engagements and conversations with the entire platform. I always like to say it, like there's I don't know if you've ever seen Game of Thrones, but there was this guy, he was the master of whisperers. I forgot
Hmm.
what his name was. And he was like, his phrase was always like, I'm here for the realm. I'm here to ensure that the realm continues. And that's what Sprout, or that's what I do on behalf of Sprout and or any company, is that I'm here for the entire company. I'm there to see not just the product segments or the communication arm to get the eyeballs onto the Sprout social logo and brand, or the strategy team that's trying to gain insights on the size of the market so they can go and better position our financial capabilities within the Wall Streets of
Yeah.
the world. My job is everything. It's the entire thing. And so that's what makes it so exciting, is that I'm here for the entire platform, the entire strategy, the realm of the space that I'm in. And, frankly, that's what makes it like a lot of fun.
Nice, nice. So as we kind of start to wrap up here, and I'm sure we could probably have a whole other podcast on this question, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway, because I saw that you recently wrote something about how Gen AI is starting to impact the analyst relationships industry.
Oh,
So
wow.
talk a little bit about that, right? And what does it mean to companies in the go-to-market strategy as kind of AI starts to get its tentacles into everything now, especially kind of analyst relations?
Oh man. So, I've been talking about this for a while. I've given a couple presentations on it.
Yeah,
This is, frankly, everybody is, right? Like,
yeah.
you can't
I can't
throw,
have an episode here without asking AI and how it impacts this specific thing, because it's in everything now.
It's true. It's true. And, frankly, when it comes to a job where information is so important, the synthesis of information, the tracking of information, obviously AI was going to impact us, and it really has been. How I like to position this is, actually, I look at the history of analyst relations and analyst firms, and really in the past 10 years, analyst firms have changed a lot. There's multiple analyst firms, there's influencer type firms, there's the firms with themselves have expanded their coverage and the types of reports. So there's not just competitive reports, there's specific segment breakdowns, there's more data, there's more content in the forms of not just the research that we have, but the blogs, the podcasts, the webinars, the events that they're doing. There's so much information that comes an AR person's way that they actually have to gain, like, an insight. Like, there's no way to sort of keep up with it
Right.
until really the past couple of years, where we've had the ability to use Gen AI to help us synthesize this deluge of information that we're dealing with. And it not only synthesize the external stuff, but the other thing that we can do is actually now start to synthesize the internal information.
Yeah.
So it's really helped the analyst relations layman deal with all of this, right? It started out with us just maybe having something that help us make a profile so we can set up in front of our leaders so they know who they're speaking to. But now it's like, I just downloaded 20 or 30 different pieces of research, and I'm able to synthesize it in a way and be able to gain some insights on this whole space so we can kind of read into exactly what's happening. And this is happening not just in the research, as I was noting, but we can record podcasts and webinars. We can pull in slide deck data, right? I can pull in slide decks as well as, like, my product overviews. I'm doing this right now. Put it into some sort of reader,
Yeah.
like a Notebook LM or Conveyor or Lupio, and be able to answer questions around my product, right? Because this is all of the information that's being let in, right? Natural language generation and or processing. So, Gen AI is going to completely transform how, and it is, right? Frankly, analyst relations is done, I think, for the better. And what's really fantastic about this is that instead of spending 60 or 70% of your time kind of dealing with all the library of information you have and trying to figure out a way to present it in the best way possible, now, maybe that's 30% of your time, and the 70% is more on the relationships that you need to develop, the
Hmm.
reaching out to the analysts, seeing them and meeting them for coffee, going and meeting with your product or product marketers for coffee, reaching out to other folks inside your organization, finding out what their needs are. What other things can I actually deliver? Because instead of spending all my time kind of trying to turn all this information to a couple slides to hand to my CEO, I could do that stuff that much quicker. And I could spend more time in the things that matter, which is the relations part, the human being. So I always like to say, when it comes to AI, when it comes to the robots taking over, well, one, they're not taking over, right? You're gonna bring their technology along to make sure that it works for you versus against you. So I think that's really vital. But the other thing is that it actually creates more human value in the IT marketplace, because now we can spend more time connecting. We can spend more time doing a podcast and talking about what analyst relations is and whatnot, versus spending all this time, trying to take all of this data that we have and making sense of it. So frankly, I'm here for the Gen AI world. Not only is it going to transform analyst relations, and as I said, it already is, but I think we're going to be better for it. So I just suggest to everybody who is analyst relations and is just experimenting and sort of playing with everything, continue to do that. Continue to develop your skills, because it's only going to make you that much better. It's
Yeah.
going to be able to help you, gain insights that much quicker. And I think it's going to you'll get so good at it that you could spend your valuable time with the people that you need to impact the most, and that's with face-to-face connections. Zoom, online, over coffee. Bring the relations back to analyst relations. That's what it's all about.
I love that, because I hear that from a lot of the experts in a lot of different industries, that it's the relationships that are becoming front and center again, right? Like sales
Yes.
roles, right? If you've got this AI transcribing your calls and putting all the notes in your CRM, what does that give you more time for? Relationships. If you're in
Correct.
support and you've got this thing that can, answer questions and spend more time troubleshooting and giving you the answers to have a good conversation, to build rapport with the customer who's having trouble, or customer success, or whoever else. It's the relationships that are becoming more central, more important, and all more human, right? Nobody likes to do the busy work piece, and if we've got the AIs helping us do that, it's great to hear that's what you're seeing happen is more of the relationship becoming front and center, and how do we communicate and interact with each other instead of the busy work that we have to do. But that becomes less of the core central element of any job, and especially with everything I've heard from you today about analyst relations, because you're this almost puppet master between not just all the people internally, but all the people internally and this external team that you're trying to persuade in a way, but also get along with. You need all the time for relationships that you can find, right?
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, right? Like, being a good person, connecting, being hungry for understanding, and getting other folks excited to, sort of be a part of this whole game, right? Of
Yeah,
industry analyst relations, industry insights, helping deliver better products or service, making it fun, putting the human back into this work. And, I wouldn't want to do anything else. It's a labor of love. Absolutely love it. And, it's a dream, and it's a blessing to do it each and every day.
love it. Well, Chris, in kind of closing then, what have I not asked you that I should have asked you? Or what do we want to share with the audience that we want to make sure we get in here that's, I don't know, you could go anywhere you want with this, but before we kind of, ask for your Latin lawn and tell everybody how to connect and how they can help you, what is one final thing that you kind of want to leave everybody with to not forget? I mean, relationships is clearly central here, but what is one other pro tip, if you will?
Yeah, to me, I think stay hungry, stay wanting to know things. Ultimately, if you do know stuff, you're on that analyst call, you're an expert. It's okay if you're an expert. It's okay even if you know everything the analyst is saying. I think that's good, because it means that you have a very thoughtful approach of how you're sort of going towards your product and your innovation, your strategy,
It's
your go-to-market
validation.
strategy. Right, it is validation. However, what don't you know? What do you want to not only get verified, but what's the thing that you're unsure about, right? You have an idea, I say whatever I want whenever I have these analyst connections. The greatest part about me is that I'm not weighed down by an experience of building a social media management platform or working 20 plus years in cybersecurity
Phones.
or, cloud computing or data science or AI that I was a part of. I've covered all these different spaces. But I sort of take a Socratic sort of view of this. I don't know anything, right? So tell me about this analyst. Tell me, what can you tell me about this, right? And I always like to bring my product marketers and product folks to say that, like you may know just as much as them, but actually think about what you don't know, or think about what
Mhm.
you want to get verified. Think about what you want to explore. The best way to engage is actually to understand that you don't know everything, but also what are some possibilities of things that you really are interested in? What's the future of spaces? What are the things that really bother analysts when they see the marketing or the coverage of a particular area?
Yeah.
What are the surprises that may be coming that they're hearing from customers? What are the pain points that they think are being delivered not just in your product but others? So the more creative you get, the more Socratic you are, the more you are open to just understanding the world and being able to uncover rocks and gain an insight and just about everything and anything around you. I think the better off you'll be. So I'm not just a analyst relations person, right? I spend my time ingesting books. I love music and
Surfer.
movies and art and surfing and museums and whatnot. I have a podcast. I'm a futurist, so I have a podcast that's called Some Future, which I'll plug now too. So
Yeah,
I
plug
think
anything else you wanna plug too, feel free.
but to me, the critical thing is be hungry.
Mm.
Right. That's what this job is for. Be hungry for understanding and learning and knowing. And the hungrier you are, and the more you could kind of sell that, engaged hunger for insights, the better I think your organization will be. I think the better you will be, and I think those insights will ring truer because you're diving as deep as you can to really understand something holistically. And I think when you do that, you're really on the edge of your innovation track, so your company, your product and service can be successful.
Love that, love that. Always be hungry, always be learning, because what is it?
That's it.
If you're not learning, you're dying. So,
It's true.
keep learning. Awesome, awesome. Well, Chris, how could people connect with you? Obviously, you've got a good presence on LinkedIn. Is there any other, ways that you recommend people connect with you, or how can they, ask you questions, stay in touch, connect with you?
Absolutely. No, LinkedIn is probably the best place. As I was saying, I have a podcast with my podcast partner, Jackson Montgomery. It's called Some Future. You'll also see that on LinkedIn. We've got it
I'll
out
make sure
on
that's plugged.
socials, including, Facebook and Reddit and sort of all those sources. I think we're going to go on TikTok here soon. Our episodes are in the middle of editing right now, so we're working on that. But I tell you, when it comes to anything involving your questions for IT, or, I like to help people with their resumes. I like to give directions about all the different spaces that I've been in. So feel free to reach out to me. I've got no problem. I've got a lot of, one thing about the relations part is that you get a lot of friends, not only just AR people, but people you've worked with both in product and marketing and communications throughout the years. So, I think you tell I'm a very external type of person. I love engaging and connecting with folks. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free. You want to ask me some questions, you want to throw me on a webinar or a podcast, or you just want to talk shop, I'm here for you. That's me. I love connecting.
Love it. Love it. Well, Chris, thanks again for your time today and your humble, generous time. And thank you everyone for tuning in out there. We'll be back with another go-to market innovator soon. And until then, keep growing, keep learning, and stay humble.